Good evening, everyone. I would like to call the County Council meeting to order for Monday, June 12th. Would you all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? And then please remain standing for our invocation, which will be done by Vice Chair Larry McKellen.
What?
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear wise and loving God, we thank you for your many and abundant blessings. We thank you for life itself and for the measure of health given us to fulfill our duties. We thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing serious responsibility. I ask that we as a body promote peace, order, and justice, and that you graciously grant this assembled body the wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, to have a sense of the true needs of our citizens, and to have a keen thirst for justice. I ask that we understand and clearly see what is good, fitting, and appropriate, and that we have the ability to work together in harmony even when there is honest disagreement, and that we have personal peace in our lives and joy in our tasks. Finally, please help us to ensure our deliberations here tonight benefit those who live and work in our extended community. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Public notice of this meeting has been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. You will see that most of the members of County Council are on the dais. One member is absent this evening. That is Council Member Reitz is absent, and one member is online this evening. That's Council Member Cunningham. So we do have a quorum to conduct the business of council. I would ask for an approval of our agenda from a member of council.
Make the motion.
Mr. McKellen makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Dawson makes the second. Duly motioned and seconded for the agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, the agenda will be approved. Item number 5 is the approval of the minutes of April 24th. I hope everybody had a chance to read them. I need a motion for that approval.
So moved.
Mr. McKellen makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Glover makes the second. Duly motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, the minutes will be approved. We are at item number 6, our administrator report. Good evening, Mr. Greenway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the council, and those of you that are with us in our council chambers this evening, and those of you that are joining us online or watching through the county channel. Welcome, and we've been having some beautiful weather here in Beaufort County the last several days, so that's good to have such a beautiful weekend. As I customarily do, I introduce employees. You also might ask Mr. John Millage to come up here and stand with me today. Mr. Millage is with our Public Works Solid Waste Division. He's an operations foreman. He's been with us 15 years. He supervises drop-off center employees, sends emails to the haulers to pick up cans, and helps clean the convenience centers. So he is responsible for a lot of responsibilities, some of our most visible facilities in the county that get used quite often that can be very messy. And as I've taught you all a lot is, most of the things that you all see in the county that is the most visible things for the public are done by some of our least visible employees, and this is one of the things that I do because their job is far more important to the operations of the county than my job or other higher level executive team members for what they do day in and day out. And it's hot and it's messy and it's wet and it's, it's just all of the things that many of us could just imagine what it would be like to work outside all the way. So I want to thank you for your service to the county, for what you do and the people that you oversee. Something unique about the employee to share publicly is once you find a job you love, you will never work again. John is a tremendous asset to the division, the Public Works Department, and the citizens of Beaufort County. He always has a positive attitude about his job duties and in general as well. John is often consulted to get his opinion on certain tasks. He is considered the solid waste and recycling go-to guy for anything involving heavy equipment and issues that arise out of the normal scope of work. So thank you again. I'm going to turn the mic over to you, let you say a few brief words if you want to. If you don't, that's fine as well. Then we're going to take a picture, and hopefully these folks are going to clap for you behind me.
I'm nervous. I'll just say thank you.
No.
Let's get a picture. Our next employee is with our Beaufort County Magistrate Court. They're unable to attend this evening, but there is a picture. Rosemary Rosie Wegman. She's the Assistant Court Administrator. She's been here 11 years. It's actually 10 years and 10 months, but I'm going to round up to 11. She is responsible for the financial accounting and reporting for the 3 court divisions, as well as assisting with budgeting and financial reconciliation. Additionally, she is the liaison between the Finance Department, the Treasurer's Office, and other agencies to ensure accurate and timely submissions and coordination of tasks. She manages and reconciles the set-off debt and unclaimed funds submission, the ordering and maintaining of inventory for equipment and supplies, publications, memberships, and other items needed by the court. Again, it takes a lot of people doing a lot of different things to operate the county every day. We have in excess of 1,300 full-time employees here at the county. Something unique about her, she is a very well-respected member of the magistrate staff. Her zest and passion for helping others and her wealth of knowledge in many areas have made her a constant resource for the magistrate judges, other agencies, departments, and the public that interact with the magistrate court. Above all, she is an integral part of the management staff who exemplifies a mature level of critical thinking skills when approached with various situations. Her input is valued and solicited on matters that may include advising or making ad hoc adjustments on daily operations, hiring, customer service, and office procedures and policies. In summary, her commitment, dedication, and service to her position, staff, magistrate court, and citizens of Beaufort County may serve as a great role model for others. It is undeniable that she plays a vital part in the magistrate's court's continued success. In her free time, Rosie enjoys reading, do-it-yourself home projects, and gardening. She is also an active supporter of her son in his school and athletic endeavors. So let's give her a round of applause. Thank you very much. And then Ashley, come on up. This is Mr. Ashley Peoples. He's a revenue collector. He's only been with us 6 months. When we say revenue collector, we're talking about business services, business license revenue collector. He assists business owners with obtaining and renewing business licensing and processing hospitality and accommodation tax remittances. Although Ashley has only been with business services for 6 months, they already see the impact he has made on the daily basis. They received him at a crucial moment, and he stepped up and excelled in training when they needed him most. His quick grasp of his responsibilities has paid off. He has a great attitude and it fits in with the team exceptionally well. Ashley suggested we recognize our customers for providing great customer support while we perform our duties in the business services department. He purchased stickers to pass out on occasion just to let the customer know we appreciate them. That's pretty cool. That's good, man. Thank you. He also has a tremendous love for his family and God. Do not mistake Ashley for his quiet and innocent demeanor. He has quite a character and fits well with the business services team. We are thankful to have the opportunity of working with him. That sentence cracked me up about fitting well with the business services team because of Carolyn back there. So if you're anything close to her, y'all have a lot of fun up there, I know. So anyway, turn the mic over to you if you want to say a few words, and thank you for your service.
Thank you. I just want to say I appreciate the recognition, and I want to say thank you to my coworkers in business services for showing me the ropes and supporting me day in and day out.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes my report.
Great. Before we go to citizen comments, members of the audience, people online, members of county council, I would like to introduce someone who wants to give us some news. He is no stranger to us. He is a friend of us, Senator Tom Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Vice Chairman, how are y'all? Just wanted to report to you that the House and the Senate budget conferees had reached an agreement last week in regard to the conference report, and it will go to the Senate and the House for voting on this Wednesday, then down to the governor. The governor then has 5 working days in which to issue line item vetoes. We'll then go back up the following week to take up those line item vetoes, and then the fiscal year begins July 1. So I wanted to give you a brief summary of the things that were in this year's budget for Beaufort County. Those of you who've been here for a while will remember that back when Weston Newton was chairman of County Council, he one time asked for $25,000 from DOT to put in a traffic signal at Sun City, and they were told that there wasn't enough money. So Beaufort County was out of luck. We've always been seen historically as a county that should just be quiet. We're wealthy. We shouldn't ask for anything. And certainly we shouldn't get as much as some of the poorer counties, but we ought to get our share. And I'm thankful to report that with Bill Herb Kurzman as a senior member and subcommittee chairman on House Ways and Means, and I'm a senior member and subcommittee chairman on Senate Finance, we were able to get these things for Beaufort County this year. In addition to keeping USCB recurring funding at 100% of the statewide average, and it was 28%, now it's up to 100% going forward on a recurring basis. There was a $10 million one-time appropriation for the Convocation Center. That's on top of prior year appropriation for the Convocation Center. I believe they're still a little bit short, but they've got enough money now, I think, for the planning and to kind of really move forward, and we'll try to clean that up and get the rest of the money next year. In addition, there was $10 million for TCL's Workforce Training Center. I think you're all familiar with that project as well. There was $500,000 given to USCB for its obligations in regard to Pritchard's Island. Some of you will recall there was a reversionary clause in that deed that could revert back if certain things weren't taken care of. Mitchellville on Hilton Head received $922,000 in an appropriation. Port Royal Sound Foundation got $400,000. Bluffton Volunteers in Medicine got $300,000. The Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust Fund, which is a group that you and Jasper County took the lead on, with all the municipalities within the county is also participating. And I think you all made commitments over time to make contributions. We secured in the budget a one-time $3 million appropriation into that housing trust fund. Again, the funds will be available come July 1. In addition to that, in regard to workforce housing, a $2 million appropriation was secured for Hilton Head Habitat for Humanity. They own a large tract of land in Jasper County, and that $2 million appropriation will go toward infrastructure for the first phase of that. Waddell Mariculture Center, they have some deferred maintenance in regard to a building or a house on the premises that a lot of visiting scientists and students and others stay at. There was a $500,000 appropriation for that. The town of Bluffton has a linear trail that it put in a request for, and we secured a $2 million appropriation for the Bluffton linear trail. Sheriff P.J. Tanner had requested some money for a crime lab. We got $500,000 for a crime lab for Beaufort County Sheriff. And then lastly, in regard to St. James Baptist Church on Hilton Head, as you all recall, we need to move that particular facility to its new site. I think it's going to be near Union Cemetery. And as part of that, we were trying to figure out dollars to make it work. You can only get a certain amount of money from the FAA, and we couldn't quite get as much as they needed or wanted, so we secured a $750,000 appropriation in the state budget to assist the county and the FAA and the town of Hilton Head Island with that particular effort. So, you know, all told, just in regard to that one-time funding that I just went through, that's in excess of $30 million, which is a long ways away from the $25,000 traffic light that Weston Newton tried to get a few years ago. So it was a very good session. We also got the Affordable Housing Act passed that allows all local governments, including Beaufort County, to allocate up to 15% of your accommodations taxes toward workforce housing. That's only good for a period of 7 years. That was a deal negotiated with PRT and the Restaurant and Lodging Association. If it succeeds and is successful over 7 years, I don't think we'll have any problem standing the program back up. But initially, it'll be up to 15% of your ATAX money for 7 years can go for workforce housing. So that's my brief report, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all might have. But I really appreciate, I want to say in particular, the assistance that Mr. Greenway gave in regard to the affordable housing bill that passed. He came up and testified at subcommittee, and it was really a group effort, and I appreciate the assistance he gave in that regard.
Any questions for Senator Davis?
I just have one comment, if I may. I know that whenever you make a presentation like this, that you tend to give all the credit to others, but I've been up there, I've seen how hard you work on these things, so I know, speaking for everybody, we offer our congratulations for the hard work.
Well, thank you for that. Let me make this one point about Beaufort County. We have the chairman of House Judiciary Committee in Weston Newton, the chairman of the Education Committee in Jeff Bradley, the vice chairman of Ways and Means in Bill Hart-Kurzman, the chairman of the Regulatory Committee in Jeff Bradley, the chairman of Labor, Commerce, and Industry Committee, which I chair, the chairman of Fish, Game, and Forestry, which Chip Campson chairs. No other county has half as many committee chairmanships as Beaufort County. So I really feel like the next 10 years for us, Mr. Chairman, whereas the last 10 years may have been for the greater Charleston area, the 10 years before that was in the Greenville-Spartanburg corridor. These next 10 years are going to be Beaufort, Jasper, and the surrounding area, and I'm really proud to represent the people of Beaufort County and Jasper County up there. It's going to be a great 10 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're at our first citizen comments. Several of the people want to talk about item number 12 on our agenda. Item number 12, we're going to be talking about short-term rentals on Defusky Island. So, Leanne, will you come forward for your 3-minute presentation, please?
Hi, my name is Leanne Coulter, and I live on Defusky Island full-time. Defusky Island was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1982 and is part of the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor, which was designated by Congress in 2006. In the Defusky Island Community Development Code, there is a sub-zone titled Rural Gullah Heritage Zone. It reads, "The intent of this subzone is to provide a district that preserves the Gullah heritage while maintaining the rural character of this area of Defusky Island. This subzone preserves the Gullah heritage sites and ensures that new development is in character with the Gullah heritage. The Defusky Island Historic Foundation has identified 20 historic sites on the island. 16 of them are in the historic district. This is significant in an area that is 5 miles long and 2.5 miles wide. And I brought a brochure for you all so that you can look at some of the history and just look and see where these are mapped out. The Defusky Island Council recommends the special use permit process for short-term rentals in the rural historic district. This process is the fairest way to allow rentals in our residential neighborhood. This process allows neighbors to know what is going on in their neighborhood before it happens, not after it happens. We are a very small community, as some of you saw, and we have very limited services. Any process that does not allow residents to know what is being planned next door seems inherently wrong. A couple of additional points about the proposed text amendment. Special use permit is being proposed only in the rural residential zone of Defusky Island. The attendance at any meeting could be done through Zoom. In mixed use and commercial zones, short-term rentals are allowed as permitted use. all short-term rentals operating legally by December of 2022 were grandfathered. This proposal does not prohibit short-term rentals on Defusky. They will be allowed in all areas of the island. The residents of Defusky Island would like to be aware if a short-term rental is being planned in their neighborhood. However, we really have to make this work for everyone. I am asking you to vote yes for the proposed short-term rental amendment to the Defusky Island Community Development Code as presented to you. Thank you very much for the
Thank you.
time to speak.
Beth McIntyre.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Beth McIntyre. I'm the Secretary of the Defusky Island Council. By now, I'm sure you're all familiar with the STR issue on Defusky Island and how the recommendation that was passed without dissent in December 2022 came into existence. Since that time, the position of the majority of the council has not changed. We are recommending special use permitting in the historic residential areas of Defusky Island. By recommending special use permitting, we have not capped STRs, we have not stopped STRs, we have not limited STRs. We have simply said that the neighbors and property owners in the historic district should have a say, a voice, in any business venture in their residential area. We are asking you to apply the same rules that you have applied to other unincorporated areas of the county. We are asking you to protect the public comment, the public's right to speak. Everyone who has come before you or who will come before you tonight to promote their use of conditional use permitting is now in the position of denying others the same right to which they have availed themselves, their right to speak on a matter that affects them. These same people are using a permitting tactic which would silence those in the historic neighborhoods, the ones who are most affected by a business in the residential areas. This tactic is used as a means to squash public comment. They would place their perceived ability to make money above those residents who they now say have no right to voice their opinion, who they now would like to silence. I come before you to ask you to think about the ramifications when you silence public comment. Comment that involves someone's home, someone's neighborhood, someone's community. The basic tenets of our democracy should be held fast at the local level. The basic right of every American to participate. The line starts here with you. The basic right to participate with our voices on the single largest financial investment that most people will ever make, their homes. We would like to use our voice to help determine the development of our neighborhoods and our community. Once again, we have not stopped or impeded the right to rent property for profit, the right to make an investment within the historic district. I am simply asking all of you that as you approve the rights of those who would make money by renting their homes, you do not suppress the basic rights of others. Our democratic right, our American right, the right to speak, the right to voice our opinions, to make those opinions known. I'm asking you to pass special use permitting in the historic neighborhoods of Defusky Island. Thank you.
Cade Yarborough.
I'm Cade Yarborough, Vice Chairman of the Defusky Island Council. First, on behalf of the Defusky residents, I'd like to thank so many of you for taking your time to attend the Finding Common Ground Town Hall meeting 2 weeks ago. Myself and two other council members, Defusky council members, called this special event for our last meeting because Council Lawson delayed the vote on the Defusky STR issue so that our community could come up with compromise. Well, we were sorry that 4 of the county council members decided to boycott this meeting, including the 2 previous speakers. Still, we think the town hall meeting was successful. One of our island residents, Pam Cobb, who runs the coffee shop, said that she understood that some people are afraid what Defusky might look like in 20 years. She suggested a 2-year pilot project program with conditional use permitting and with information collected like things like increase of STRs, financial impact on small businesses, complaints, and and the Defusky Council and you folks could decide on the change in the program as it continues. At the end of the town hall, there was a show of hands in support of Pam's compromise. At least 3/4 of people raised their hands. There was one concern about conditional use, which was the voice of the people, and that was whether or not it would be difficult to revoke the permit if there were violations. No one seemed to think that the county should go to court to do that. So in response to Mr. Lawson's request at the last meeting to reach compromise, here's a compromise that came out of our town hall meeting. Allow conditional use permitting as a pilot project for Defusky, with a review that County Council and the Defusky Council at the end of the project could change and be reviewed. In addition, a section could be added that makes it clear that the removal of the permit because of violation should be done through administrative process, not court process. Language from Hilton Head and Bluffton conditional use regulations should help you with this new section. Finally, I think that most of our community would like to ask to you to think about the Hilton Head, Bluffton, and Beaufort. To those of you who represent these these towns, they have conditional use program for STRs. Less than a mile across the water from Hilton Head and Bluffton is Defusky. We know we don't look exactly like those towns, but we don't exactly look like the rest of unincorporated Beaufort. We think that it's fair that a pilot project be approved with conditional use permitting for Defusky to see if it works for our community. At the end of the pilot project, changes can be made if it doesn't seem to be working out. Thank you for your time.
Deborah Smith.
Thank you. I thought it would be helpful to summarize the arguments in favor of conditional use permitting. 1, a special use permit requirement requires several trips to Beaufort, not just to the ZBOA hearing, but also to meet with staff. And we've discussed with you at some length how onerous this requirement is for Defusky property owners. 2, the proposal pending before you includes a long list of requirements or conditions. That list is more extensive than in any other Beaufort County community and includes things like certification by a licensed building inspector every 3 years, trash management, a sign with a phone number to report problems, and noise guidelines. These conditions and many more should ensure that both safety and public health concerns are satisfactorily addressed, as well as minimize problems for surrounding neighbors. 3, with no hotel, most of our small businesses fear that special use permitting will make it more difficult for visitors to vacation on Defusky. The economic consequences to our community could be severe. 4, special use creates uncertainty about whether or not a permit will be approved. This has already caused a chilling impact on real estate sales, with several cases of purchase contracts falling through because the buyers were not sure they would be able to recoup some of their expenses. 5, if special use permitting is approved for our historic district, it will only impact a small percentage of the island's STRs. Most are in the resorts or other communities. For a tiny island with less than 500 residents, treating property owners differently leads to resentment and divisiveness. It comes down to simple fairness. Should the resort property owners have an entirely different standard than our island's working people? 6, we believe that the special use permitting process will be used as a weapon to restrict additional STRs. Anyone who questions this should read Chairman Roger Pinckney's quote in today's Island Packet article about this issue, in which he defends a special use requirement by saying, "We have enough STRs on Defusky." 7, we view with skepticism statements about what Defusky might look like 20 years from now if conditional use is approved. Right now, the historic district is largely undeveloped. There are 540 lots, and the list of STRs is no more than 13, excluding the small cabins at Freeport Marina. The recommendation at last week's town hall calls for a 2-year pilot project using conditional use. One way or another, this issue can always be revisited by both Defusky and your council. 8, this entire process has been an answer in search of a problem. Our historic district STRs tend to be small and are occupied by couples or small families. They are not the party groups we see in the resort area. There is no record of any complaint about historic district STR guests brought to the Defusky Island Council. Finally, we believe conditional use helps protect property owner rights and allows owners who are willing to follow the extensive list of conditions the right to develop their property as they choose to do so. Thank you for helping us to find common ground on this very divisive issue.
John Shatner.
Good evening. I'm also a member of the Tusky Island Council, and I'd like to thank everyone who came in last week by the invitation of Mr. Lawson. We enjoyed you all coming over, and I hope you saw some of the problems we are having with the problems of the SDR decisions. A couple of weeks ago, Mr. Lawson said the mission of the Tusky Island Council was to represent the people of the Tusky Island. We do not make laws, we do not make requirements, but we are just a body to represent the voice, the opinions of the Tusky Island to you. Now, the past year and a half, the Codes Committee and the Tusky Island Council have been having numerous meetings, public meetings, on the SDR issues. We had 3 public surveys. We had over 200 people respond to each of those surveys. Each survey came out with 2/3 of the population favored conditional permits. We had open discussions at our council meetings, and just like the open meeting we had last week, 2/3 of the people again decided conditional permitting is what we wanted. So the representation of the Tusky Council saying to you that special permit is what they want is misleading, is very misleading. So what I'm hearing you say, and also a couple of weeks ago, Councilman Cunningham said that special use permits could have 3, 4, 5, 6 people go to the zoning board and say, no, we don't like Mr. So-and-so, we don't want his SDR. And that's a very good point, and that's what we're afraid of. So conditional use does not pit one person against the other, and is what the majority of the community decided upon. So thank you very much for listening.
Okay, that ends our citizen comments. We'll now go to committee reports. Any committee reports from members of County Council? Okay. Seeing none, we're now going to move on to our public hearings and action items. I would ask a member of council for a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
Mr. McCallum makes the motion.
Second.
Mr. Dawson makes the second, duly motioned and seconded. Any questions? Seeing no questions, the consent agenda will be approved without objection. Item number 10 is a time-sensitive item that originated from today's Community Services and Land Use Committee. It is the first reading of an ordinance appropriating the proceeds and interest from the 2017 General Obligation Bond Anticipation Note to design, engineer, construct, and equip a joint fire EMS station in Sun City and defray costs associated with the establishment of a permanent embarkation locations for the Tusky Island Ferry and other matters related thereto.
I'll
A
make the
motion?
motion. I'll second the motion, Mr.
Ms.
Chairman.
Tabnick made the motion, and
Howard.
Ms. Howard.
Ms. Howard, yes, I'm listening to you and writing something else down. Duly motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, this item will be approved without objection. Item number 11 is also a time-sensitive item originating from today's Community Services and Land Use Committee. It is the first reading of an ordinance authorizing the county administrator to execute the necessary documents for the sale of real property, also known as Camp St. Mary's, to the Beaufort County Rural and Critical Lands Program. A motion, please.
So moved, sir.
Mr. McCallum made the motion.
I'll second that.
Ms. Brown made the second. Duly motioned and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, this will be approved without objection.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think you skipped-
Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you skip over the last one? Is that?
No,
I'm sorry, I must have missed that one.
no, we did 10, now we're on 11.
One of those days.
Logan, you had a comment about item number 11?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I apologize for not being there in person today. Yeah, I do have some reservations about it. Originally, we talked about using this land in a swap in rural and critical lands out on 170. It went to second reading, and then that actually got tabled. And we never had any other discussions about that after that second reading, and this piece of property was key in those discussions. So I know this is the first reading, it's gotta go to 3, but I would like to conclude those discussions first. I know that it needs a supermajority, I know that there's disagreements with that committee with it. But I also know that there's a lot of history that this council that has not been completely up to date on. I don't know if today is the time to do that or another day, but I will be voting against this because that information has not been concluded yet.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah. I do know what you're talking about, and without getting into that, this is not the time to do that right now. This is the first reading. When we were at the Community Services and Land Use Committee, there was a thorough discussion, there was a presentation, and everybody was in favor of actually doing what we said. This property has been in the hands of the county for 26 years. It has had numerous discussions about how it should be used, and now is the time for us to move forward and make that a passive park. In order to do that, we want to put it in the hands of rural and critical lands for the preservation of that park in perpetuity.
And I think you're right, with the ultimate goal is to create this into a passive park, and that's the goal I would like to see done as well. I just think we need to make sure that we fulfill all needs of the community, and this is an opportunity to fulfill ball fields instead of using taxpayer dollars to fulfill. But yes, I understand it's first reading, and we can have that discussion later on as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Did I steal any of your thunder, sir?
No, sir.
I did a good job? Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, this will be approved without objection. Are there any objections? One objection.
Actually, make it 2.
2 objections. Okay? But it still passes on first reading. Item number 12 is the first reading of an ordinance for a text amendment to the Community Development Code, the Defusky Island Community Development Code, to amend various sections without me having to read every single one of those sections. This is the item for STRs. I'm going to ask for a motion and a second first, and then we'll get into the discussion.
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Lawson makes the motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Dawson makes the second. I thought for sure you were going to weigh in. Okay, a discussion. Mr. Greenway.
I'm mostly here to answer any questions, but I wanted to go over with you briefly the 3 types of uses that we list in our Community Development Code. You all were emailed this about 2 weeks ago, I believe. So essentially a permitted use is something that's listed by right in the Community Development Code. You just meet the development standards for those buffers, setbacks, parking requirements, and things like that, and it's allowed. Conditional.
Is that allowed in the in the planned unit developments like?
Planned unit developments are an entirely different use. The way I describe planned unit developments is that's where you go in and write a zoning code that applies to that particular piece of property.
Okay.
None of these permitted uses, conditional uses, special uses.
No, I'm just talking here about permitted uses.
Right.
Is that a distinction for a use for a short-term rental?
No, it is not.
So the permitted uses are the things that are following?
So, and underneath the Community Development Code,
Yeah.
there are 2 places where short-term rentals are allowed as
Right.
permitted uses, and those are in our commercial districts, C4 and C5.
Right,
In Beaufort County.
okay.
And if you meet those buffers, setbacks, parking requirements, meet the building code for having your short-term rental, you're allowed to operate without anything additionally.
Without any conditional use permit or special use permit?
That's correct.
Okay,
So there's, but our C4 and our C5, that's a very small percentage
Got it.
of the zoning in the county.
okay.
Conditional uses have to abide by the district standards that are permitted uses subject to, such as buffers, setbacks, parking, and things like that. But there might be additional conditions that are associated with that have to be met, such as if somebody wanted to put a bar has to meet all the permitted use development standards, but it also has to be 500 feet from a church, a school, a playground, or something like that. Might have limitations on the operating hours, has to shut down at a certain time on a Saturday night or a Sunday morning. blah, blah, blah. So those are conditional uses. If you meet the conditions, then you can operate without anything else. That requires the same number of trips to the county community development department and to the building department as special use, with the exception of one particular thing. Special use, same thing. All the district requirements of the permitted use may have additional requirements that somebody has to meet in order to qualify for the special use, such as under conditional use. But it has to be, once it's reviewed by the staff, it has to go before the zoning board of appeals, and the zoning board of appeals must conduct a public hearing and determine that that use is appropriate for that property in that particular location. And the zoning board of appeals can either deny the request, approve the request, or approve the request with additional conditions and stipulations in order for the use to operate.
So that's a public hearing, and it can be conducted either in person or by Zoom?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that people on Defusky don't have to travel here and spend the night to attend this meeting. They
That's
can
correct.
participate, as we do in a lot of meetings, if they have the equipment and the ability to do so,
Yeah.
or can obtain that assistance to do so. They won't have to travel here for that.
That's correct. As
Okay, is that the only distinction, is that public hearing? And
Yes.
that occurs before the permit would be issued?
That's correct.
Okay.
So if you'll go to the next slide for me, Sarah. So this is the zoning. You may have to zoom in a little bit for me, a little. So under the current proposal on Defusky Island, anywhere you see a P, that's where short-term rentals would be permitted without doing anything. Wherever you see an S, that would require a public hearing, a special use. So where you see the pink and the purple and, the shades of purple and all of that, those are permitted. The area where there is no color, it's just gray, those are all PUDs or resorts. Melrose, Bloody Point, Hague Point, all of those permit short-term rentals underneath their standards. All the other areas that you see, the greens, the light greens, dark greens, and all of that would be by special use on Defusky Island as currently proposed.
So, do you see any Cs up there?
There are no Cs. There are no Cs anywhere for short-term rentals anywhere in Beaufort County.
I'm gone. So,
And then-
so what, are we talking about instituting conditional use permits where they don't exist?
You all are talking about instituting
Yeah, that's what I'm
conditional use
saying.
permit.
Right.
And
This is being considered
DAR,
tonight.
and DAR is talking about that.
Right.
But the county staff has from day one proposed that all short-term rentals on Defusky Island, outside of those commercial areas on the island, be approved through the special use process, which would require a public hearing that, as we already discussed, can be performed virtually.
So all of the permits that now exist either are zoned for it, or it's a permitted use, or they've participated in a public hearing prior to the issuance of the
All of the
permit.
ones that exist now,
Right.
we have stayed any kind of action on those until we can resolve this issue.
No, the ones that exist already.
The ones that exist on Defusky Island right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, most of those, we have stayed any action on those until we can resolve this issue.
So they don't exist.
They don't exist legally because short-term rentals, until we developed a short-term rental ordinance,
Yeah.
short-term rentals in Beaufort County were not a permitted use or a special use or a conditional use anywhere in the county.
Okay.
Were people doing it? Yes, they were.
Okay.
But it was not a legal use because we had no provision in the community development code to allow short-term rental. So anytime something isn't enumerated in a community development code or a zoning code, you typically consider it to be a prohibited use. So many who were on council back then, remember whenever Mr. Vox was on council, we had a situation in the May River area where someone was leasing their home out for short-term rental. They rented it to a wedding party. The wedding party brought in a tour bus with the wedding party, and they got the bus hung up in the neighborhood, and the bus could not get out of the neighborhood. And as a result of that, we got tremendous amounts of complaints in code enforcement. Mr. Atkinson and I was the plan director then, we spent days dealing with that situation, and county council demanded that we take some action. So Mr. Atkinson and I drafted a amendment to the Community Development Code to allow short-term rentals on the code. We brought it before council then. The council, because of the outcry, said, we don't like this. We don't want you to do this because it didn't make anybody happy. So the county council appointed a committee that was, had citizens that were against short-term rentals, and also people that were involved in the accommodations business. A person by the name of Drew from Hilton Head Island that was led some short-term rental property on Hilton Head was on there, and you all know Mr. Dick Stewart. He served on that committee. The auditor served on the committee. The business license director served on the committee, and a few citizens served on that committee, and some short-term rental owners served on that committee. So we put together a proposal and brought it back to county council, and the resulting proposal was that short-term rentals in Beaufort County would always go through the special use process and have a public hearing, with the exception of the commercial zoning districts, where the intensity and density there is such that it wouldn't matter anyway, because you already have accommodations in those particular zoning districts.
Question. So if I just understand correctly, you're saying there's no conditional use in the rest of the county for short-term rentals?
That's correct.
But there is conditional use for other things.
That's correct.
Such as in Defusky, if you go to number 9, right after number 8, which is short-term rentals, number 9, lodging, bed, and breakfast, 5 rooms or less.
Mm-hmm.
Those are conditional uses.
Yes?
If you go to daycare in a home, which is a commercial use, that is a conditional use.
That's correct.
Or daycare for adults is a conditional use. So conditional use is something that is used
Yes.
in the county.
It
Okay.
is, yeah.
And then when it comes to our actual ordinance that we're looking at, if you can just explain to me registration of all STRPs require a permit. However, we're going to grandfather in those folks that have previously been renting, that were doing short-term rentals. And the way that we read this, it makes it sound like we're giving them a conditional use as opposed to having to go through a hearing process. So explain to me what that
So whenever you.
so the grandfathering in is.
Right, whenever you develop a new zoning code, you're typically going to have people that are already doing something related to that particular use. So you set the standards in the zoning code or the development code as to what someone has to do in order to be legally non-conforming to be recognized as an existing use, okay? And that's what number C, or number 4 on this sheet here does. It says all legally permitted dwelling units operating as STRs up through the year 2022, which can provide proof that accommodation taxes have been paid, shall be allowed to continue to operate. All new STRs thereafter shall be subject to the process established in B320. I do not have that in front of me, B320, but it is the special use process. So the county council said, if you were in a legal dwelling, meaning you weren't renting out a storage building behind your house for somebody to stay in, and if you were collecting your accommodation taxes and remitting that to the county as you're required to do, then up to 2022, we're going to grandfather you in, and you do not have to go through this special use process. We've done a similar thing with Defusky Island, and basically have said that if you were in a legally permitted dwelling and you were paying your accommodations taxes, you don't have to do anything, you can continue to operate your short-term rentals. Then folks started saying, well, my house was under construction and I was gonna use it for short-term rentals. Can't do anything about that, you gotta draw the line somewhere, so we basically follow the same
I
process.
got that, but when you say they're grandfathered and permitted to operate, with what kind of permit?
So they're permitted to operate, they get a short-term rental permit if they can prove to us.
I
that
know I
they've
get
done
that,
these
but
two
what's it
things.
called? The short-term,
Short-term rental permit,
Right.
an STRP.
that's it. It's not a special use. It's not a conditional use.
If they were
It's an
operating,
STRP.
if they were
Okay.
renting prior to 2022.
I know, I get it, but they're getting a permit that's not conditional or special.
Right,
It's a different kind of permit.
that's correct.
It's a third one. Okay, I got it now.
Well, it's grandfathered.
No, Graham.
I know, I get it.
Right.
I get it.
Okay, others?
I have a
Then what
question.
else? Go ahead, and I'll, go ahead, I'm ready to go. It's good.
Mr., I have two questions. One, in B1, can you explain, it says, in cases where special use approval is required, the zoning board of appeals may establish an appropriate rental limit as a condition of approval after conducting the public hearing and finding that conditions exist making such a limitation necessary. Is that actually, can you explain that to me? Because
Yeah.
it sounds like it's trying to actually limit the amount of rentals. I know we said no caps have been placed, but.
They could do that because, as I've told you all previously, many jurisdictions around here and then other places say, well, only 10% of the homes or 12% or 20% of homes on a street can be short-term rental. Well, if you're the first 20% and you get your short-term rental, nobody else can get short-term rental on there, okay? I think that's arbitrary and capricious. I didn't see how anybody could legally say, okay, well, it's okay for you to have 5 short-term rentals on the street, but if somebody wants to do a 6, that's inappropriate. The zoning board of appeals, that language gives the zoning board of appeals to say, hey, you got 5, there's 8 homes on the property, we're not gonna allow any more if they wanted to do that, if somebody alleged that. It was just is an opportunity for them to consider setting limitations on the appropriate number. Again, going back to the intent of special use, being the appropriateness of that use on that particular property in that particular location. It was just a set of standard that they could consider.
Mr. Chairman, I remember when all this happened with Mr. Vaughn's district and the street was blocked and it brought everything to a head. Mr. Greenway described it quite accurately. I knew some of the people that were on that task force committee. They spent a lot of time and effort. And going back to one of the people during public comment that made, this protects people on a street by requiring it to go to the ZBOA, and we have the means to do that. And I am very much in favor of applying the same rules to everybody in the county, just as far as short-term rentals go in this situation.
To help us direct this and not just keep going over and over again, I heard some things by the presenters. They were concerned about the historic district as to having a say in the historic district. How do you answer that, Eric? The question was, in the historic district, we have concern about short-term rentals because of the nature of the historic district. How do we answer that?
Well, the historic district on Defusky Island is very rural, sparsely populated on many of the streets. But in some areas, you have more homes on the street. The special use process would allow each one of those streets or people that live around there that's going to be impacted by those short-term rentals to have a public voice in the process is what happens there. I will tell you from experience, and I know in situations like this, 95% of what you're dealing with here is perception of what reality will be. It's not really reality, it's just perception. Could someone use the special use process as a weapon against their neighbor? Possibly. But that has not borne out in the experience with other locations of the county where the special use process has been in play. There have been times when people have been denied a special use permit in Beaufort County and on the mainland. but that is because there was a legitimate problem. People allowing their kids to drive golf carts across their yard, on their driveway, getting on their properties, having parties late at night, disturbing their neighborhood. It all boils down to, if the county council wants to allow this to be conditional and say, hey, if somebody meets the conditions, they can have their short-term rental, or allowing their neighbors to have a voice to say, hey, this is the way short-term rentals are being handled and managed on our particular street, and we would like for the Zoning Board of Appeals to consider that as you approve this.
To your point then, it would seem to me that what we're trying to do is to have sets of rules. And we shouldn't have sets of rules. We should have one rule. And that is the qualifications for a short-term rental. I've taken a look at the short-term rentals ordinances in the various municipalities around us. They don't talk about conditional, they don't talk about special use, they talk about short-term rental. And what is the identification of a short-term rental, the conditions, what happens if you violate the rules and regulations. I think for consistency purposes, that's what we, the council, should be focusing on, not this should be a special use and this should be a conditional use. It is a short-term rental. How do we want that to be done? I think that's the focus of our discussion.
Maybe I can just comment for a minute on something that might put it in perspective, which is, I'm an enforcement and violations guy, and I like to try and understand some things. If we eliminate the requirement to come to Beaufort County for the public hearing and do it by Zoom, we've eliminated one of the adverse parts of this special use. Conditional use doesn't need that if we grant conditional use. Okay. If there's a problem after the permit has been issued and it's a conditional use permit, my consultations with our esteemed Beaufort County attorneys have indicated that there would be a citation issued by a code enforcement officer, and that citation would establish a court date in a magistrate's court, and then that matter would be settled before a judge at some point when it gets on the docket. And if that didn't go quite the way they wanted to, they could appeal it, probably to the master in equity. And having been in that business, I can tell you that would take about 18 months before it was actually heard. So resolving the issue doesn't really happen very quickly with conditional use. If we issue a permit, I don't care what you call it, if we have a Beaufort County short-term rental permit, and we have the hearing, and it's done by Zoom, and nobody has to come here, and then we have a problem with a person who's renting the unit, we could have them not have to go to receive a citation and go to court. We could have them actually file their complaint to the Community Development Department Director for an administrative hearing, and not go to court, and not have a code enforcement officer. And then if that decision wasn't satisfactory to either party, they could appeal that matter to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and it would still stay here and not go to court, right? Okay, so that may satisfy people who feel that there is a violation occurring with regard to the issuance of the permit, and they have a voice in saying, bad things are happening here, and we'd like to have it addressed, and it's not going to take 18 months to get it resolved. It's going to be resolved probably within 30 days. There's one other thing it says here, that if people violate the provisions of the permit on 3 or more occasions in a 12-month period, then they would consider revoking the permit. I think, if you make one mistake, you should be given another chance. I'm not in favor of 3 times. Of course, there's always mitigating circumstances. But I believe that 3 times is way too many. And if we have a Beaufort County permit program, and we have a hearing, and the permit is issued, and then people can have the permit revoked for bad behavior, I think that may go a long way to resolving some of these things, rather than having people get code enforcement and magistrates and circuit court judges involved in resolving these matters. But I don't see that happening here for us, unless we come up with some kind of a uniform permit for everybody to use, and I don't really care what you call it. Well, it has to be something that we can give so that everybody has an ease of obtaining it, and then has some way they can resolve an issue where it appears that someone is engaging in bad behavior.
But again, Eric, I appreciate you coming forward because some of this is new information for us. So what I just heard was there is no special use, there is no conditional use. Once you have an STR permit, you have a permit. So they're all dealt with in the exact same way. So there is no special way for a conditional STR permit, and there is no special way for a special use. It's just the going before the zoning board to get the permit. Is there only one STR permit? That's what you just said?
No. So essentially what I was talking about is the special use process, and then what we did with existing people that were already operating short-term rentals.
Grandfathered.
But they still get the same permit in the
They
end.
do get the same STR
So
permit.
you treat them the same way once you have
That's
the
my
same
point.
permit.
You
Yes.
have all these different designations, but maybe we could unify everything, make it easy for people to get these things, but all have the same expectations going forward as to how they can resolve problems. That's all.
And if I could, I mean, obviously, we went to Defusky and we had some great council men and women go with us, and it was a very, very informative meeting on Defusky, very civil. We heard from both sides, and representing Defusky now, this is my 5th year representing Defusky, trying to find a compromise in this thing because Defusky relies on their short-term rentals. There's no hotel over there, so they have to have it. And whether they were in the past, we've changed our laws. That's why they now have to get permitted. And there's some people that have been doing short-term rentals without a permit, some that have. And again, whenever you compromise, you're not always the most popular person because you have someone that wants red, and this people went red, these people who went yellow. When you compromise, you give them orange, and nobody's happy. But I'd like to make an amendment at this point, and not to change what we've got in front of us as an ordinance, but to add a simple line that I think then would take care of some of the issues that we have. And it's not a solution that's going to solve everything, but we would still end up having the special use process that everyone talks about that's going to protect Defusky. So at this point, we are going to go ahead and what you're calling, and even in our information here, grandfather someone in. So that basically means that people that are grandfathered do not have to go through the zoning board process. They are able to fill an application, and they're able to then get a permit. Again, it's not a conditional permit, it's not a special use, it is just a STR permit.
It's a Beaufort County permit.
It's a
That's
Beaufort
what it
County
is. Right.
permit that you've got. Besides offering it, again, this is my amendment, that whenever we talk about those grandfathered, is also to include any new applicants who wish to get a permit without going through the zoning board. So anyone that currently has a short-term rental, anybody that wants to do a short-term rental, because I know there's folks over there that have been trying to get a permit from us since we've dragged our feet for the past year, that they've got a house and they can't get a permit, that they would have 60 days, just like the grandfather people would, to fill out the proper paperwork. These are existing homes. These aren't new homes. These aren't ones that are going to happen a year from now or 2 years from now. All those would be under, that what everyone wants is the special use permit. So I'm asking that we add language that says that the grandfather folks would be able to get a STR permit, and anyone else could apply for that same STR permit, still have the same application process, fill out the same paperwork, but they just would not have to go through the zoning board process.
For how long?
We'll go through what's in here, 60 days.
Okay.
And in a 60 days, everything after that would then be part of the special use to come in and actually have to do that. And again, Eric has promised to make it simple for them to come in and actually do it online, as you mentioned, Larry. And we can then even look at trying to make this so it's not so complicated. So I guess my amendment would be to add online, it's 1B4, to add after the first sentence where it says we allowed to continue to operate, to add the language, And also, all new applicants who meet all requirements shall be able to get a STR permit as well. Again, eliminating the need to come before the zoning board. And again, so that would give people 60 days to file their paperwork, become compliant
For existing homes,
for existing homes.
to have COs.
Because you have to have a,
Okay.
you can't permit something that's not there.
Right.
So it would be for existing properties.
Okay.
Anyone that's been there, planned on doing it, can do it, that's willing to do it, they have to follow all the paperwork you would normally get. They just would not have to go through the zoning process.
Okay.
But at the end of 60 days, anyone then after that, that's new, and again, in our language, it says if you sell it, you have to come back and get it rezoned.
Okay.
In the current ordinance, it says that if you don't apply and don't have the SDR permit, and it expires, you then have to come back and reapply for it. So all that language, I'm not looking to change anything, I'm just looking to add the people besides the grandfather folks that you've got worded in here, that anyone else that wants to apply that has been there, has owned a home, can also get that same exception, and then after that, we do the
Let me
SDR.
just ask a question and clarify something, to protect the neighbors. Not the person who's got the SDRP, but the neighbors of the person who has the SDRP. I want to be sure that the people who live in the neighborhood can go directly and solve this problem administratively and not through the court. So I want to be sure that with the SDRPs, and if we're going to stay with special use, that they can go to the
That's how we're
community
gonna create the new ordinance.
What?
That's how we're gonna create the new
Yeah, I just want to be
ordinance.
sure that they can go to the Community Development Department Director for the first decision, and if they want to appeal that, then they go to the Zoning Board of Appeals, not to a code enforcement and magistrate or to circuit court, but to solve it, and everybody should be able to solve it the same way, which will give a voice to the neighbors if they have a
Okay,
problem.
we need a second to have the further discussion.
That's a little complicated, but I know Tom Kevney is writing all this
I
down,
will,
so I'm
I want to make
not.
that second on the floor. Can I add something to that, please?
Go ahead.
Would you be interested, I don't know if there's any houses in the middle of construction now, but anybody that has already broken ground on the house, give them
No.
30 days after they receive their CO?
No.
Because we're not sure how many people have already planned to build these houses to do Airbnb or short-term rental. There could be people that are planning on making this their second house.
You are getting ready to open up a can of worms for staff that is just
Yeah.
gonna kill us.
It would be a
We get-
burden.
I get calls, my phone started ringing at 7 o'clock this morning from Defusky Island, on my way into work, so,
All right.
about
With
a
that said,
fence, so
that's-
let's don't
that's
do
fine.
that.
I'll drop that, but
But-
can I ask two questions then?
Go ahead.
One, does Bluffton, Beaufort, or Hilton Head have this same language that we're trying to add to Defusky currently? Do they currently have the exact same
It
language?
appears that they do, Logan, and it appears that they have an administrative remedy for issues that
Right.
that I've been addressing.
Yes.
Okay, and then my second question will be, and I'm just throwing this out there to the members on council, because I'm still wrestling with it. We're getting ready to invest
No, I know.
$8 to $12 million into dockings after counting the land we already purchased for the ferry station, which you just approved on number 10 to continue to move forward with. Can this provision hurt the tourism on Defusky? If so, then why are we about to invest $12 million into Defusky? And then make this rule right here that could hinder that growth in Defusky?
No.
Well, I don't think that we're changing what would be happening there, other than affording a simpler method of protection for people in the historic district when we have an issue with the way a property may have been running, so it's interfering with the peaceful enjoyment of their own property, which everyone is entitled to. And that's the concern that I have. So with regard to, Alice said that she didn't think the language was the same as the municipalities. I'm only talking about the administrative remedy, Alice. I'm not talking about the language that they use, or what they call it over there, because I really don't know what that is. But I was just trying to keep everybody out of court, because you can't resolve anything if you do that. That was my goal.
Right. Right.
And I agree with that 100%. The court system is just gonna get tied up.
Yeah.
I guess my only question is, have we even had these issues in the historic district where we have to change this, or is this something they're just preparing for something that's never even happened?
Well, we're reacting to something that's newly happening because of regulations with regard to business licenses, short-term rental permits, all over everywhere.
So short-term rentals, again, are not legally allowed on Defusky Island currently because the Defusky Island zoning code does not make a provision for short-term rentals. So we're trying to correct that. And I've been trying to correct that for going on 2.5 years now, I think, is what we've been working on this particular item. So
So we can
if you
do that
can,
here now. I mean, we
you can do
that
it here, and I would
moving forward.
appreciate it if you would do it and do it quickly, because quite honestly, I'm tired of allocating staff resources to Defusky Island in
We'll
this
take
issue.
that challenge.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So to summarize, the amendment is to add a piece of language that says, over the course of the next 60 days, if you have a legal residence, if you have a CO, if you have a house that you were thinking about, you're living in it right now, you were thinking about it, and you meet all the requirements, in the next 60 days, if you apply for a short-term resident permit, you do not have to go through any special procedure. After the 60 days, we're directing administration to come up with all of the appropriate language for a new, yes, for a new ordinance, which I think we can do in 60 days, because we can charge you with coming back to us, first reading, second reading, third reading, public hearing, for an ordinance that will say, this is the conditions by which you will get a short-term rental permit.
Yeah, and then you can change the zoning in that language too.
Yes.
And adopt it all.
That's a
Mr. Chairman,
second
would
ordinance.
that 60 days take effect starting of the final reading on the third, take effect of the end of the third reading?
Well, we could have a start date. I mean, that's negotiable. We can put, yeah, we could put down an effective date. I mean,
All right, so let me make sure I understand, because I'm really confused now, because I
Okay.
thought we were going special use after 60 days on Defusky Island.
We are.
And
We
not,
are, we are. Whatever
well-
we're going to call it, we don't have to call it special use. It is the process by which you are going to get a short-term rental permit.
that's
it
it.
involves a public hearing.
And it involves a public hearing,
Completely
yes.
separate.
Okay.
Completely
Okay.
separate item.
That's special use.
We may have to
Completely
change the
separate.
name so it's more accommodating.
Right.
But it's, what we're trying to do here is simplify the process. Don't make it onerous. Don't make people suffer to get this STR. Let them get it in a way that's not going to cause pain. And then if there's a problem with the performance of people who own these things, give their neighbors an opportunity to complain about it so that they can have their right to have the peaceful enjoyment of their own property, not being interfered with by the people who run a defective STR.
Yeah, I'm good. So, I mean,
That's
if
it.
it's basically saying, hey, give everybody 60 days if they have a house out there and let them get approved as a conditional use. And then
No,
from
no,
that-
no.
No.
Why are you
It's
using
an
that
STR
word?
permit.
Yes.
Let them get the
them
STR,
get a
and then
permit.
after that,
Right.
they go special use. I'm good.
Right.
Because that ordinance is already written.
Yes, and that's right.
And I don't have to
There are
change
going to
it.
have to be some changes,
No,
because you
they-
want to do something with the zoning, you said. You've been trying 2.5 years to fix that.
The zoning is done, the
It's already
ordinance
in
is
there.
done. The
Okay.
ordinance-
Okay.
You're getting ready, you're giving a reading to the ordinance. It's
Okay.
done.
Okay.
So what, his only change is, anybody that's got an existing CO and living out there can have short-term rental for 60 days. After that, they go to this ordinance that is before you this evening. No changes need to get done.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, David.
Mr. Chairman, real quick, Mr. Greenway, is there objective standards that the ZBOA uses in determining these things? And can we define some objective standards
So
if
on
there's
the
not?
on the record, I'm gonna say yes. So, it's, bottom line is, it's the same objective standards that, we use to decide that golf courses are not allowable in the CPO,
Gotcha.
essentially.
And
Mr.
then-
Chairman, if I could make to
Yeah,
your
just-
point,
yeah, just-
watch some of the ZBOA meetings where these are being heard, and you will hear the variety of things that
Yes.
neighbors object to or that neighbors agree to. And then the ZBOA makes their
I
call.
mean, we had one person that put forth a short-term rental before the ZBOA, and they had people they were renting spaces in a unit that didn't even have the appropriate head clearance. People had to actually crawl up there to get in their beds, and they were renting this out as short-term rental. That's why you
Well,
need
was
a
that?
special, that's why you need a special use permit, because staff sitting in the office looking at that application doesn't know what that is on the field. And once you issue the conditional use permit and the building inspector goes out there and finds it,
Yeah.
you are in for a world of hurt. The special use process, if you have the special use process and you hold a public hearing, then a neighbor that lives next door that's out there 24/7
They know.
will come in and say, hey, you might want to take a look at the conditions that these people are renting to these folks.
Okay.
Or if they miss it at the first hearing, they still have an ability to come in and make that complaint inside the house we live in rather than going to another house.
All right, so we have two actions to take. We have an amendment that we have to take up first. That we will do now. Are there any other questions about the amendment? Okay. Everybody understands the amendment? Okay.
Let me, Mr. Chairman, make sure, I'm following Larry and the enforcement part.
That has nothing to do with what we're talking
Enforcement.
about right now.
Okay.
It is, we're going to allow for
For
60 days, those
grandfather in.
people who
Okay.
have the ability to
Got
get
you,
an
got you.
STR
Okay.
will get it.
Sure.
We'll talk about the enforcement next. Okay, everybody is okay?
Mr. Chairman, we still need to clarify if that's taking effect today or after third reading, the 60 days.
After the third reading. Yes, because this is the first reading with the amendment. All right, is there anyone who will object to this amendment? Seeing no objection, the amendment has passed. We're now back at the first reading with the amendment. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none.
Okay, what about all the items that I talked about with regard to ensuring that this stayed in our own house and it didn't go outside? Is that in there?
That's already in this ordinance.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're acting upon the ordinance as amended for first reading. Is there any objection to the first reading of the ordinance as amended?
Yeah, I'm going to vote no on it.
Okay,
Probably the only one.
there is one objection. Any other objection? Then the first reading as amended has been adopted. Okay, now we're at some public hearings. Our first public hearing and the second reading of an ordinance authorizing the county administrator to execute the necessary documents, provide funding for the purchase of and grant easements on a portion of real property located on Highway 170, known as the Cooler Tract. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment about this particular item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. I need a motion and second for this ordinance.
A motion. I'm sorry.
Mr. McKellen made the motion, Ms. Brown made the second, duly motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we will adopt the second reading of this ordinance. Next, we have a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance for a text amendment to the CDC regarding primary structures, regarding building connections, regarding accessory dwelling units on a single parcel. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment about this particular item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. I need a motion and second for the second reading of this.
I'd like to make the motion, Mr.
I'll
Chairman.
second it.
Yes, okay. We are duly motioned and seconded for this item. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Ms. Howard, Ms. Tabernick made the motion and second. Seeing no objection, this will be approved as second reading. Next is a public hearing and approval of a resolution authorizing the county administrator to execute the necessary documents for a purchase of a portion of real property abutting the Hilton Head Island Airport located on Summit Drive. A motion, please.
So moved.
Mr. McCollum made the motion.
I'll second it.
Ms. Brown made the second. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment about this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. Any discussion about this?
No.
Seeing none, this will be approved without objection as a resolution. Item number 16 is a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance to provide for the levy of a tax for school purposes for Beaufort County for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024, and to make appropriations for said purposes. Is there any member of the public who wishes to comment about this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment. We need a...
I'll make the motion.
All right.
I'll second.
Looking
Ms.
at me.
Kaepernick made the motion.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. McGowan.
I think we're falling.
Ms. Howard made the second. Duly motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Without objection, this item will be approved. Congratulations to the school district. Next is a public hearing and third reading of an ordinance to make the appropriations for the county government and special purpose districts for Beaufort County for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2023, ending June 30th, 2024, to levy taxes for the payment thereof, to adopt law enforcement uniform service charges, user fee, to provide for the expenditure of said taxes and other revenues coming into the county, to provide for the expenditure of said law enforcement uniform charges, user fee, and other matters related thereto. Is there anyone who would like to make a comment about the budget? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing portion. May I have a motion and second for the budget?
I'll move, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cunningham makes the motion. Ms. Brown, you made the second. Duly motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion about this item? Mr. Cunningham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is Whitney in the room today?
Yes, she is.
She's
I
hiding.
was just wondering if it's possible she could give us an update on any changes that we've made to this.
Sure.
I can. Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hopefully this will be a much less contentious item, and I can do so briefly. During the first two readings, there was really only feedback concerning the adjustments to the compensation that staff had proposed. The feedback that we received really had three main points to it. That the 3%, number one, as proposed, with it being a combination of a COLA and merit, was unfavorable because of sometimes the potential for an evaluation to fall prey to the subjectivity or bias in being conducted by a supervisor. The second concern was that 3% on a larger salary is not equitable when compared to 3% on a lower earning salary. And I forget what the third one was.
A stipend.
Not the stipend, the hourly rate. Now I
the hourly
remember,
rate.
excuse me. It's been a long day. The
Yeah.
third concern was that 3%, while nice, was still an insufficient amount to really bring our lowest wage earners up to a more competitive or livable wage in Beaufort County. So staff really took to heart your feedback since the previous reading and has come up with an alternative solution that we think you all will find favorable. Spreadsheet jokes aside, we have staff who are really good at crunching numbers and who are very technically proficient in their field. So I would like to commend Mr. Williams, Ms. Christmas, and Ms. Mead and Ms. Webb for their work in putting together this proposal for you. And that simply stated tonight is that instead of doing a 3% across the board increase, that we would do a flat $3,000 across the board for full-time employees and likely a $1,500 increase flat for part-time earners, with the goal being that our least earning wage, which is currently $13.81 an hour, if it is bumped up by that minimum, will now be $15.25 an hour, which makes us more competitive in the market. It means that our employees now have a livable wage. It promotes equity because your higher earners didn't receive a greater increase than your lower earners, and it does not create compression. So everyone is moving up equally. So for those reasons, we are asking that tonight that you authorize the increase still, but rather than being distributed in the form of a 3%, that it's done by these flat rates. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have with that. And Logan, did that answer your questions?
Right on the money. To be honest, I kind of got goosebumps about it right now because I know it was a tall task for you guys to do in 2 or 3 weeks. We weren't sure if we were going to be able to come up with an idea. You guys have an amazing team to be able to pull that off. I don't think there's anybody else that could have been able to do it but y'all. You know, we've advocated really hard the last couple of years for our teachers, but not necessarily the rest of our county staff. So I'm glad that we were able to do that. I think that's a big jump. I do think you're right. A flat fee instead of percentages goes a long way to all of our staff, and this definitely makes us competitive. Commend your guys' self, the rest of the staff. They knocked it out of the park, and I hope the rest of the council gets behind it as well, and congratulations.
Thank you. I forgot to add that we are doing with this within the same millage that was previously presented. There is no increase in the millage rate.
Whitney.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair, that was the amendment question. Do we need to make an amendment for that, or is
No.
that already?
No. It's already
in there?
included.
It is in there. In order to
Okay.
fund this, there is no cashing out of accrued leave time this year. That was the one caveat to making this doable without increasing the millage rate. And this
Any other-
applies to employees on the county's compensation plan.
Which you still lower the mills by 4.5, I believe, too, right?
Overall, I think that's right. This is within the operating millage, which I think previously was 53.9 and is now 51.7. I believe that's right. So
Yeah.
the operating millage piece still decreases, as does the debt service piece.
Ms.
So
Tapper?
your team was able to give the raise and save our taxpayers at the same time.
Yes, sir.
Right. I was simply going to point out that Mr. Williams, Ms. Richards, and Whitney, all of these people heard from numerous council members. I mean, I harassed Hayes endlessly, and they do a lot with spreadsheet, and they listened to all of us, and then they came up with this solution. So I think they're all to be given kudos to get us to where we are.
Okay, any other?
Mr. Chairman, just one more thing. I don't see Ms. Walls in here. I know that issue came up the last time at the last hearing.
Right.
Did her budget proposal, did they get worked in, or did y'all work that out? I haven't heard anything regarding
So-
that issue anymore.
Her employees are eligible for this exact same increase
Okay.
because they are on the county's compensation plan.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Okay, any other comments?
Just one. The Director of Public Works was pleased, or he's still not satisfied with the increase?
I'm not sure. I've not received anything from Public Works. I'm not aware of what you were speaking to.
The increase in his wages, a lot of his workers were probably at the $13 level.
Yes, sir. Actually, this does affect many of our employees in the lowest bracket did fall within Public Works. I'm sorry, now I understand your question. Most notably, many of our not convenience center attendants, what do we call them? Jared, help me out here. In my old county, we called them convenience centers. Collection centers, thank you. This will impact our collection centers attendance as well.
It's good. It's a good start.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any
Anyone
other
else?
questions? Seeing none, this
I
will
just-
be approved without objection. Are there any objections?
No.
Seeing no objections, we now have a budget.
Budget.
Congratulations to the staff, because we have gone years in the past where we had to have special meetings in June, on the last day of June, to adopt a budget. So
Mr. Chairman,
congratulations.
I'm sorry, I did not realize that we're doing second reading for the school district. So we got one more reading for them?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. That's why I clapped, because I thought that was the last time we do that.
No, it's
So
the
we got
second.
one more.
Now, we keep
Okay.
congratulating them. It'll be done. Item number 18 is approval of a resolution and approval to enter into an IGA, intergovernmental agreement, with the town of Hilton Head for an expenditure of transportation impact fees on the adaptive traffic signal management system. A motion and second, please.
I'll make the motion.
I'll
Ms. Tappernack made the motion, Mr. Lawson made the second, duly motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, this will be approved without objection, and I see no objections. Item number 19 is approval of a resolution to use impact fees to retain HDR Engineering, Inc., to study, recommend, and design enhancements to Bluffton Parkway pedestrian accommodations and aesthetics, AKA Bluffton Parkway Enhancement Project. May I have a motion, Mr. Cunningham?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Cunningham duly makes that motion.
I'll second it for him.
Ms. Kaepernick makes the second, duly motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Does it include golf cart access?
It better, no.
Another day.
Yes.
Throw that for
Okay.
him.
This will be approved without objection, and I see no objections. And our final action item is the approval of a resolution establishing a tax advisory committee to plan for a future sales tax
I'll
program.
make that motion.
And I'll second.
Ms. Howard made the motion. Mr. Dawson makes the second. Duly motioned and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, this item will be approved without objection, and there are no objections. And for those of you who are wondering, this is the group that is going to work very hard at presenting what we need for the future in the way of transportation, capital projects, other projects to be included in a possible referendum in 2024. Finally, we are at our citizen comments, and we do have some people that would like to come before us, and the first person is Jake Rail.
Jake, thanks for waiting. You're a patient
Yes.
young man.
Yeah, really.
Bring that microphone down so we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay.
Take your time, Jake.
Good evening, councilmen and women. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Jake Rayo, and I play baseball for the Bluffton Waves 10U team. I started playing baseball when I was 4 years old and fell in love immediately. Over the years, I've played second base, third base, right field, and after years of practice, I finally accomplished my goal to start as a pitcher. Coach John says that baseball teaches a lot about life. For example, I have learned the importance of working hard, setting goals, teamwork, listening and communicating, the art of winning and losing, good sportsmanship, having a good attitude, taking chances, and making quick decisions. My coach makes sure that me and my teammates keep our grades up. He also holds us accountable, making sure we remember to be on time and be prepared to play. He also makes it a lot of fun for us. Since I've joined the Waves, I've made over a dozen new friends. They're all good guys. We practice or play games 2 to 4 times a week, sometimes more. There is no time for us to get into trouble. Our team is a non-profit organization. The coaches are not paid. It is also non-exclusionary. Anyone can play on our team as long as they have a good attitude, good grades, and love baseball. It is different than other elite travel teams because those teams charge thousands of dollars for kids to join. We try to raise money from local businesses for our team that goes to paying for our tournaments, which are usually in Savannah, Charleston, Statesboro, and Rincon. But what we are really looking forward to is going to Cooperstown, New York in 2 years to represent the town of Bluffton. For anyone that doesn't know, Cooperstown is a great honor. It is an international baseball tournament. Not everyone gets a chance to play there. We will need to raise at least $25,000 to go. We are getting sponsors, but are having a hard time saving because each year we spend almost $4,000 to rent fields from the county to practice on. We need a solution, and I'm hoping you can help. We need an affordable place to practice on so we can go to Cooperstown and make you all proud. Please help me and my team. I'm sure you can knock it out of the park for us. Thank you for your time.
Very good.
Jake, come on up here a second. Come here a second. I got something for you so you can start a collection. Take that home.
What is that?
Thank you.
You don't know what it is yet. Someone will tell you when they read it. Okay, buddy. Good luck. Thanks for coming.
Okay, very good. Mr. Tropiano.
I promise you I didn't plan that. But Jake, I'm good for 10 grand for you, buddy.
All right. Oh.
And that's an example, not a nefarious one. We can make things work. Like that. Good evening, Chairman. Jake, you're a stud. Everything that you just said is, first of all, unbelievable that you had the courage to get up here and say that. I finally got 2 today, but what an awesome kid. Everything that he talked about sports is what I learned in football, and honestly translates to golf really well, but we'll get there. Mr. Chairman, Council, thank you for your time. I'm here to talk about item 14 on the last agenda, but unfortunately I didn't get a chance to speak on it then. I trust that Council's been receiving letters from people, my nearest neighbors, people across the county, and you're going to start getting a lot more of them as these facts become reality. There'll be more voices coming forward, and it's been very difficult to get them to come forward because this room's been tough. People like Jake remind me that that's what this room is about. It's changed, and I know we've all felt it. It's palpable, but we're gonna move it in the right direction. And I trust that everyone on this council heard from Mr. Orridge and Mr. Terrell. I commend them for their courage to stand up, seemingly in the face of their community, but actually standing up for it. I hope everyone understands that Daryl is the vice chair of the CPO committee. And for him to stand up and say that is an extremely impactful thing, and I want everyone to understand the merits behind why. I was hoping to present it today, but a majority of you have now been out to my property to understand how spectacular it is, but more importantly, how unique it is given the circumstances that we're in. The intent of the ordinance is to prevent gentrification, the rapid immigration of residents, rural displacement. We all know that 550,000 new cars and 500 plus new residents will change the dynamics of places forever, but we're stuck in a seemingly concentric circle of zoning, law, and something that doesn't quite make sense. That's why it's unique. Now, I get it. I did it. But I'm hopeful that we can all understand the facts in a manner that allows us to come to a pragmatic solution. And in order to do that, this coming week, I'm going to be submitting to staff, to council, to legal department, the scaffolding and contractual arrangement that hold me accountable to remove all the elements that I've discussed from my property forever. People, docks, houses, roofs, pervious surfaces, all the things that we don't want any more of is something that I am willing to do, and I expect these to be considered in an actual time-sensitive manner. Now, this will become a choice, and unfortunately that's what it's come to, but I want to be able to provide the facts to everybody here and the way to make that choice. So I look forward to having these discussions, hopefully not in 3 minutes, and hopefully anchored by Jake. But I appreciate it. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, literally, to shape the future of the entire area. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Is Martha Hutton still here? No? Martha's not here? Okay, Brittany. Is Brittany here? No? Okay. Sarah Reynolds Green.
Good evening, Chairman Passman and County Council members. My name is Sarah Reynolds Green, and I live on St. Helena Island. I'm here. I'm a native of St. Helena Island, and I have been very active for many years in our community, teaching our students about their sacred culture, traditions, and heritage, and the role that they play in living in this harmonious and prestigious place. And also teaching them how to be good stewards of the land, the environment, and to be respectful at all times. We have been here for about 6 months or so, working with our community to uphold the CPO. And I find it very tedious and it grieves me, really, to be here to talk about it, because I think that we could sit down and come to a better conclusion. We have before us 2 options, but I think there are many options besides 2 options. And I want to see some of those options explored. I've talked to Mr. Alvio, and I feel that he's able to compromise, and I think we need to compromise because he's a landowner. He wants to develop something. He wants to help the community. We need to pull our resources together and find a way to do it. As I said, it grieves me to hear that such valuable and historical place can be developed into a golf course, and I'm definitely against that. And I'm against the 166 houses as well, because the point of it is that we need to put something there that is not going to destroy and lessen the value of the property, but enhance it for all of us to take advantage of. Additionally, all of you have been very good in voting against the development, but I know you have reservations about what happens next. And you're going to be charged with the responsibility of, if that property gets developed to the point that he has said it could be developed, it's going to be on all of us. And so all of us are going to be responsible. And we have to take that in consideration. Also, we've heard about sustainability a lot. And sustainability means that a sustainable community manages its human, natural, and financial capital to meet the current needs while ensuring that adequate resources are available for future generations. Now, what future generations you think in years to come will they have if St. Helena becomes another Hilton Head? We won't be here. Our land will be gone because sea level rise, everything that destroys the waterways, the land. I'm a farmer, and I don't even want mosquito people to come and spray in our area because it contaminates the air, it contaminates the plant, it contaminates the soil. So you know I'm really serious about ecological preservation. And as our community continues to grow, we have a big task on our shoulders to do something to slow it down and to make it so where it is sustainable, that people can continue to live here and love it and enjoy it like all of us do now and in the future. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
One more person, Jemiah Moore. Is he not here? Okay, is Henry Brandt here?
Hey, y'all.
Good evening.
You'll have to forgive me, too. This isn't usually the forum which I speak to people, so I'll work my way through this the best I can. But my name's Captain Henry Brandt. I'm one of the owner-operators of Coastal Expeditions, and I run the Beaufort branch here, and my partner Chris runs the one up in Charleston. And Coastal Expeditions got here to Beaufort in 2020 because we picked up a contract with SCPRT, and we run a ferry service for them. And that's one of the things that brought us down here. And in our search, there's like certain criteria, before we make the type of capital investment it takes to move to a new area like this, is kind of trying to figure out where it is that we fit in Beaufort. And one of the places that really struck me when we first moved to this area was St. Helena. I moved to Charleston back in the late 90s, and it reminded me a lot of what Johns Island used to look like back when I first moved to the Charleston area. And it still had a lot of those really quintessential rural, low country aspects to it. And we were kind of thinking about where we wanted to find a niche for ourselves. We took a look at the overlay of St. Helena Island to kind of see where we fit in. And we saw that it was a bunch of cultural preservation overlay and then a lot of commercial fishing village overlays to kind of protect those different aspects of low country culture, the fishing and, the Gullah Geechee. And I was like, this is really cool. They put so much effort into this, and they had the foresight to see that this was going to be an issue down the road, and they forecasted it. And we were happy when we looked at that cultural preservation overlay and the commercial fishing village and said, well, we fit in. They're looking for people like us to move into this area. And when I saw what was happening with Pine Island, it seemed so against the greater vision of what they had in mind for St. Helena. The fact that trying to work around this cultural preservation overlay, which is there to capture the essence of the area, and what golf courses and gated communities will inevitably do, if approved, will set a precedent, right? And they'll say, well, this precedent will then cause a chain reaction. Other people will try to duplicate the same thing. And it will effectively sterilize the cultural elements that it was there to originally protect. So what I'm trying to say is like, look for businesses and for people that are trying to fit in to the vision that was put there, not try and change the cultural fabric of the Low Country. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I believe I was number 5 on the list.
Doesn't matter. I choose who I want to hear from. I was looking for a number of different people. We have used up our 15 minutes at this time. Is there any further action to come before County Council? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.